Hello everyone, welcome to part 12 of my Server 2025 training series. Today we're going to be discussing NTP authority, how to configure it so that way we can prevent time skew throughout our domain. What is NTP and why is it important? NTP stands for Network Time Protocol. It's pretty much just a protocol used to synchronize any participating devices with NTP to a centralized time source. The main goal of NTP is to ensure that all computers are within a few milliseconds of UTC. So why is this important? Security protocols, so think about Kerberos, you can also think about SSL and TLS. They rely on accurate time for authentication and encryption to function properly. If someone's spoofing time or doing anything to pretty much nullify the integrity of time, that's obviously not good. There's replay attacks that could happen and quite a bit of other things as to why that's just not great practice. But this is exactly why NTP hierarchy is so important, and I can't stress it. In my opinion, it's probably the most important thing you should configure in your Active Directory domain. If you don't configure NTP properly, this can lead to time drift, which can cause a wide variety of issues all throughout your domain. So think users can't authenticate, you can't RDP to servers, you can't replicate Active Directory properly because AD is going to see that the times don't match up and it's going to not allow them to replicate. So just think about pretty much anything inside of your domain is probably going to break. This even includes failover clusters if you're doing any of that. It's just the list goes on and on infinitely as to why you're going to have a massive headache if you don't configure this properly. But last couple things to cover with the importance. Of course, you want to have accurate timestamps for system logs. NTP is going to aid with that. And then you got to think about compliance purposes. So any kind of industry standards such as HIPAA or any regulations that have to be followed through HIPAA, rather, it's very important that you have accurate timestamps in case there's a breach or anything that you have to go back and review. Now that we know of the importance, what are we going to be covering in our lab today? In our lab, first we're going to configure our Hyper-V hypervisor with NTP. Then we're going to set our VMs to not pull authoritative time from the hypervisor. This isn't best practice, and a good way you can think of that is, let's say, if you are migrating your VMs to a new hypervisor, you already want your NTP settings to be set to point to your primary domain controller. That way it just gives you less of a headache and you know everything's going to work the way it's supposed to. We're going to configure NTP with the group policy object, and we're going to set a WMI, so a Windows Management Instrumentation Filter, that will ensure that we are always applying that GPO to our primary domain controller. So whoever's holding that FSMO role is always going to get it. So it's always important to remember that the PDC FSMO role holder acts as the time authority for the rest of the domain. And it's very important that we configure our GPO in this manner, so that way if we ever have to move FSMO roles, that new GPO is going to apply to that new FSMO role holder, and our time is always going to be accurate. After that, we're going to review some helpful Win32 time commands. Then we're going to apply our GPO settings and verify that our settings applied successfully. All right, so let's get into it. All right, now that we're in our lab, let's go ahead and pull up command prompt. And we're going to check a couple settings on our hypervisor just to see where it's currently pulling time from. First, we're going to do this command. So w32 time / query peers. We see we're pulling from time.windows.com. We can also do a source. And we see it's time.windows.com. We also have that 0x8, which is just saying we're sending client requests, which is what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our time service a little more robust. We're going to go ahead and copy this command. And essentially what this is going to do for us is it's going to configure NTP. We're specifying a manual peer list. So we're doing the majority of the pool.ntp.org servers. We're doing 3 total, and we're having time.windows.com as a backup. Me personally, I always point to pool.ntp.org. Mainly because it's been around forever and I've never had any issues out of it. With time.windows.com, I honestly haven't had issues out of that either, but I'd rather not have all of my eggs in one basket to where everything points to Microsoft for everything. We're also going to say syncfromflags manual, which just means that we're manually specifying the sources that we want. Then we're going to say reliable, which just marks our local machine as a reliable time source. And /update is going to apply the change immediately. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And the command completed successfully. So if we go back and look at our source, we see that we currently have pool.ntp.org. We're going to do our peers command and check it out. So we have all of our peers. They're all accurate and working as expected. And that pretty much covers it for the commands we have to run on the hypervisor. The other thing that we need to do, however, is we have to go to our settings here on each VM. For integration services, we're going to disable time synchronization because we do not want our hypervisor to sync time to these virtual machines. Very helpful if you plan on migrating to another hypervisor, or really it just helps with best practices later on. We're going to go back to settings, and we've got one more. All right, perfect. Now that that's disabled, we're going to go ahead and restart our hypervisor, and we'll catch back up as soon as this is rebooted. Now that we're back after a fresh reboot and we've started all of our VMs, let's go ahead and connect to our Windows 11 RSAT machine. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to open up a command prompt. We're going to run as administrator. And just to show you how time authority works, so since this is a domain join machine, it's going to pull time from one of our domain controllers. You see it's pulling from DC1. We can do the status here just to check how and look how it is. It says source gtdc1.80.greentech.org. Everything looks good there. And typically you're not going to have any issues out of domain controller or domain PCs pulling from a domain controller, but it's good to check before you get started just to verify. So we're going to minimize, and now we're going to open up our group policy editor. The first thing that we're going to want to do in here is we're going to create a WMI filter. We're going to say new. We're going to call this PDC. For description, we can say this WMI filter will always grab the PDC FSMO role holder. And for queries, we're going to leave that blank for the namespace. And we're going to go ahead and type this query here. We're going to say select asterisk from Win32 computer system where domain role equals 5. We're going to click OK. And when we click save, our query is going to be validated. And we know it works because the validation is good. Now that we have our WMI filter, we're good to create our new group policy. We're going to do new. We're going to call this PDC NTP time hierarchy. You can really call this anything that you would like, as long as you clearly know what it's for. And we're going to click edit. And we're going to go to policies, administrative templates. We're going to scroll down to system as soon as it loads. So we're going to do system. We're going to do Windows time service. We're going to go to time providers. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to configure Windows NTP client to enable. So we're good there. And we're going to set a couple of different settings here. So you can see that it's set to time.windows.com, 0x9 for now. We're actually going to paste in these here. So we have all the pool.ntp.org servers, and we also have the time.windows.com at the end. So that looks good. And all the defaults here should be fine. Let's go ahead and apply. And after that, we're going to set enable Windows NTP client to enabled. And we're going to enable Windows NTP server. And let me double check here. Oh, sorry, we're just going to do NTP for the type there. Let's go ahead and set that. We're going to apply and okay. Now we're going to go ahead and close out. And we're going to go to our WMI filtering, and we're going to set that to PDC. So that way it's only going to apply there. But we also have to link this policy to our domain controller. Now that we've done all that, let's connect directly to our domain controllers. And we're going to do a sync, and we're also going to check those GPO objects. Because I have noticed a couple of various glitches with GPO objects in Server 2025. Specifically, if you make changes from an RSAT device, they may not always populate. So we're going to verify if that's currently happening for us. So let's go ahead and just do a quick sync with both of our domain controllers. And we're going to do the same thing here. Okay, we're going to pull up our GPO editor on DC1. So it looks like we have our filter. We're going to reopen just to be certain. Okay, so perfect. Everything's looking good so far, but as you can see, we still have to link this to our PDC. We're going to say yes. And okay, that looks good. Make sure there's nothing else weird going on with any of these policies. Everything appears to be fine, so we're going to do another sync from DC1. And now, since we should have everything configured, let's go ahead and do a GP update force. Then we're going to check the results right after to verify that our settings have applied. There's a chance that it could still be locked into the CMOS, but there's a way we can get around that. We're going to GP results /r scope computer. Okay, so apply GPO objects. It looks like it's applying our PDC NTP, which is what we want. So now let's go ahead and run Win32 time, query source. And sweet, looks like everything's working. Let's do peers. Looks like we have all of our NTP servers set up. We also have that time.windows.com we added to the end. So it's looking like we should be good to go. Everything's configured. Key takeaways from this lesson are going to be that NTP is vital for proper domain operations. It's extremely important. I stressed it before, but I cannot stress it enough. If you watch any of my videos, please spend the most time on this one and ensure that you set up your domain time correctly. Also, PDC is the time authority for your domain. That's why it's vital that we create that GPO with a WMI filter that's going to target our PDC role holder, even if it moves to another server. That way our hierarchy is always up to date and correct. But I hope this video has been informative for you. I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll catch me in my future videos. Peace.